All right, so Robert, you are a legend. The first thing I said when I saw you, I said I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
As I love your book, she said, which one? I said 48 Laws of Power, and I said that's the one that I think that was the start of everything. It's your philosophy, right? So I want to focus on that to start, and then maybe we could shift to maybe the most recent book and discuss that as well. But I guess my first question is, are the 48 Laws of Power things that can be used individually, or do they need to be used collectively? Or is any one law important, makes a difference in your life by itself?
Well, it's basically mostly for individuals. It sort of comes out of a time, and I still think we're living in that time, where I generally believe it's every man and woman for himself. That we live in a really competitive, kind of ruthless environment, where back in the day when my father, he worked his whole life at one job, he was a salesman. That world is gone, where a company was loyal to you and they had your back, and it kind of went both ways.
Absolutely.
That's all gone. It's been totally annihilated. And now we're in a place where you have to basically look after yourself. And I wrote the book because it came out of my years working in Hollywood. I was working in various capacities for directors, and I was trying to be a writer. And I saw a lot of incredibly, manipulative maneuvers by people who appeared to be very benign, very liberal.
Like a Mike Ovitz type of situation?
Yeah, Mike Ovitz, but even like producers and directors, lower level. And things that kind of ended up inspiring the 48 Laws in many ways. And the idea was, I think I started off as a somewhat naive person. I went to college, I was interested in literature and books and things like that. And then I entered the work world, and I worked in New York in journalism and all over the world, and then in Hollywood. And I wasn't prepared for the kind of nastiness, for the kind of
dog-eat-dog
Machiavellian maneuvers that people have, and it caught me off guard. And so, and nobody talks about this. When you read business books or management books, they always start from the premise that we're basically angelic people,
good people, yeah.
Our better self, our
ethical.
better natures. Yeah, and a lot of people are. That's a good part of their character, but there are a lot of people who aren't. And just that 5 or 10% who are really devilish and conniving, they're the ones that end up often having the power. There are no books written about it. It's like our dirty little secret. We talk about sex or anything, nothing's really any secret anymore, but power, nobody wants to talk about it or discuss it. So I wanted to give a book for people, to answer your question, it's more for you as an individual, kind of a manual to help you basically prevent you from making very stupid mistakes that we've all made. One mistake in your business life can be fatal. It can ruin you. It can cause you can be fired. You can create all kinds of emotional trauma that you never get over. So I really wanted to help on an individual level, help you make you more aware, more conscious of the game that's around you, and it is a game.
Would there be one particular law that you would say, this is the one you want to start with? This is like the linchpin law of power. And if you don't do this, you're going to find yourself on the ass end of a lot of situations in life.
Well, there are two laws that kind of go together, I'd say. The first one is law number 1, never outshine the master. And you'd be surprised how many people violate this law. And the premise of it is that the person who's above you, and there's always somebody above you, no matter how high you rise, has an ego, right? And you're not aware that even people who are very successful have egos and insecurities. You assume that they're so strong and powerful, they reach this high position, that you can almost, do anything. You don't have to worry about it because they're so strong. But in fact, the higher people rise, the more sensitive and prickly they actually become. They're very worried about whether you respect them enough, etc. They're worried whether, what are people saying behind their back? And the premise behind that is, if you try so hard in the work world to impress the people around you and impress the boss, or I call it the master, never outshine the master above you. It could be a woman, but that's the word we use. You might end up inadvertently triggering their insecurities. They might end up thinking that you are more popular than they are, or they might start worrying that perhaps you're after their job or whatever. And so it's a story that repeats itself endlessly, where you end up becoming fired or isolated in your position, and you're not aware of what happened. Because if a boss, fires you because of this, they're never going to say, well, you made me feel insecure. They're going to come up with some rationality. Sure. They're going to say, you did, your performance isn't up to par, whatever it is. It happened to me.
Or set you up to fail in some way.
Exactly.
Right.
It happened to me. I was working on a television show as a researcher, and the percentages of programs that ended up being filmed by me was like 80%, whereas there was like 5 other researchers there. So I was the most successful person there by far, and then I got fired. I was like, what the hell's going on here? Isn't it about performance and results? And I had a good attitude. It was because I was doing too good of a job, and it was making other people kind of feel like, I was too ambitious or something was wrong with me. So that law is very important, because I've talked to so many people who've suffered because of that, right? Your boss, the person above you, has insecurities. You have to be aware of that, and you need to feed their ego if you can, and never inadvertently trigger those insecurities. Okay, that's law number 1.